Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe. Forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempest rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whate'er may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fit it for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and o'er thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely, assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O man of God, have done with lesser things, give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O man of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O man of God, the church for you doth wait, her strength unequal to her task. Rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod, as brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God.
Well, let's edify. Good evening. We are going to be in the book of Romans in just a minute. I'll give a few more minutes to people who are filing into the room. How y'all doing? Tonight we're going to be looking at Romans 3, starting in verse 9. Hi, Reba. So if you have your Bibles out, I'll be turning there. Hello. Give people just another minute or two to get filed in and be turning to the book of Romans. That's weird. Good evening, Heather. Good to see you. Let me try and fix this while we're waiting. Okay, I might have to. This is not working right. Okay. I'll put it down here. Alright, well, without further ado, let's get into our study. We will greet Sister Heather. Like I said, we are in the book of Romans, and this is lesson number, lesson number 6, and give me just a moment here. I don't know why OBS is doing this. So I might have to do what I did last week. We'll see. Yeah, I'm gonna have to refresh my computer, it looks like, if I want that to work. Alright, we'll do it this way. So we are in Romans, and this is lesson number 6. And just to review a little bit, in chapter 2, verses 25 through 29, Paul talks about, last week we studied this, that circumcision avails nothing. And he says in verses 17 to 24, by leaving the law of Moses, the Jewish Christians broke the law, so they have no advantage. he says, "You who say do not commit adultery," verse 22. Do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who make your boast in the law, do you dishonor God through breaking the law? For the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you, as it is written. And so the reason why they're trying to go back to the law, and Paul says no, but by you coming to Christ, you broke the Jewish law. You're not under that law, so circumcision will profit you nothing under the law of Christ. Instead, the circumcision of the heart is the one that matters, not the circumcision of the flesh. This is a part of the new covenant that Paul is explaining here. It is the circumcision of the heart that matters, not that of the flesh. And he says in chapter 3, verses 1 through 8, he asks the question, what real advantage has the Jew over the Gentile? The only advantage Paul sees is that the Jews first got the oracles of God. What advantage then, chapter 3, verse 1, has a Jew, or what profit of circumcision? Much in every way. They have an advantage in that they first got the oracles of God. And so the Jews and the Gentiles, the Jew had this advantage over the Jews in that they already been in a covenant relationship, whereas the Gentiles have not known a covenant relationship with God. But today we're going to see that in verse 9 he says, but that doesn't matter. I think my clicker might be dying. Because he says in the next section, in the first part of verse 9, what then are we better than they? And so he's going to start this section off, and we're going to read verses 3 through 20. And actually, if we were actually in a class setting together, here's when we would, here's when I would call on somebody else, but since we're live, I'll just read it. Just a little insight on what I do for in-person studies. 9 through 18, let's read that and then we'll talk about it. What then, are we better than they? Not at all. For we have previously charged both Jews and Greeks that they are all under sin, as it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. There is none who understands, there is none who seeks after God. They have all turned aside. They have together become unprofitable. There is none who does good, no, not one. Their throat is an open tomb. With their tongue they have practiced deceit. The poison of Alps is on their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways, and the ways of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know that whatever the law says, it says to those who are under the law, that every mouth may be stopped, that all the world may become guilty before God. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, no flesh will be justified in his sight, for by the law is the knowledge of sin. And so Paul starts out here. What then? Are you the Jews better than the Gentiles? Since you have this advantage of having the law, having a covenant relationship, now are you better? He says, by no means. All are under sin. What then? Are we better than they? Are we the Jews, the Jewish Christians, better than the Gentile Christians because we have the law? By no means, he says. All are under sin. And he says in verse 10, as it is written. Now Calvinists have a heyday with verses 10 through 18. That they rip this out of context and think this quote is teaching total depravity, that man cannot respond to the gospel. But this is not one big quote. This is a bunch of little quotes. So what we need to do, since these quotations are from multiple passages in the Bible, we're going to need to go back and see who is being talked about in each of these quotations and what the original context was. So to gain understanding, we must go back to these quotes. We must go back to the original context and not just rip it out of context and say it is talking about a total inability. So he starts off, as it is written, no one is righteous, no, not one, in verse 10. Verse 11, he says, there is none who understands. And at the end of verse 11, he says, there is none who seeks after God. This is taken from one passage, is Psalm 14, 1 through 3. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They do abominable deeds. There is none who does good. The Lord looks down from heaven on the children of man, to see if there are any who understand, who seek after God. They have all turned aside together and have become corrupt. There is none who does good, not even one. Notice what Psalm 14, 1 through 3 says. It says here that the fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. Who's they are the fools. And notice verse 2 of this text. The Lord looks down from heaven on the children of men. Well, this idea of children of men goes all the way back to Genesis 5 and 6. Children of men are seen as the evil people in Genesis 6, 1 through 5. And the sons of God are those who have been called, who have called on the name of the Lord in Genesis chapter 4 and verse Genesis chapter 4 and verse at the end, I think it's around verse 20. Give me just a second. Genesis chapter 4 and verse 26. And as for Seth, to him also a son was born, and he calls his name, and called it, and he named him Enos. Then men began to call on the name of the Lord. These are the sons of God here in Genesis 6, 1 through 1 through 4. Now, notice Genesis 6. And it came to pass when men begat to multiply on the face of the earth, that the daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, sons of God, the daughters of men. Enoch was already walking with God. The context of Genesis 5 is that men were calling on the name of the Lord. The sons of God are those who are righteous, like Enoch, like the people in Genesis 4. So you have those people in Genesis 6. The sons of God came into the daughters of men. They bore children of them, those who were mighty men, who were of old, men of renown, great people. And so this is the precedent. So we go back to Psalm 14, verse 2. The Lord looks down from heaven on the children of men. These are the fools. These are not the righteous. This is not teaching total inability. The quote that Paul is taking this from is talking about those who are in rebellion against God. And he's saying here that all are understanding. It doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter if you are a descendant from Abraham, a Jewish Christian, or a Gentile Christian. It doesn't matter that the Jews first got the oracles of God. They're under sin. And notice verse 3 of Psalm 14, where this is quoted from. They have all turned aside. This is not total inability. They chose to turn aside. Now, notice Psalm 53, 1 through 3. It basically says the same thing, identical text. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt, doing abominable iniquity. There is none who does good. God looks down from heaven on the children of men to see if there's any who understands, who seek after God. They have fallen away together, they have become corrupt. There is none who does good, not even one. Notice, God is looking down from heaven on the children of men. Those are contrasted in Genesis, the righteous who were calling on the name of the Lord, and children of men there refer to the wicked people who are not. So if we're going to compare scripture with scripture, then we have to say that this is not teaching total inability. That Psalm 53 is teaching the same thing. Also in Ecclesiastes 7:20, surely there is not a righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. This is the crux of what he's saying. It's not that Paul's teaching here in this section that we have a total inability to do good. There's not a man who does good and never sins. We all sin. That's Paul's point. That's his whole point in the chapter. There is none righteous, no, not one. There is none who understands. There is none who seeks after God, because we are all under sin. We have to keep in mind verse 9. Remember, the Jews and the Gentiles are all under sin. Verse 9, for we have previously charged both Jews and Greeks that we are all under sin. Now, notice the next few that Paul says. Notice what Paul says in verse 12. They have all turned aside. They have together become unprofitable. There is none who does good, no, not one. Again, this is quoted from the Old Testament. Notice in the same three passages, Psalm 14, 1 through 3, 55, 1 through 3, and Ecclesiastes 7, 12, the three passages that we looked at. In those texts and in this text, it doesn't teach total ability. It's contrasting the sons of God, the righteous, with the daughters of men, the sons of man, the wicked, the foolish, the ones who have turned aside, Psalm 14, verse 3. And it says that they have turned aside. Why is there none righteous? There's there's none righteous, no, not one. There is none who understands, none who seeks after God. Why? Verse 12, they have turned aside. They become unprofitable. Paul says they became unprofitable. Not that they were before the foundation of the world. They became unprofitable. There is none who does good, no, not one. In regards to the people, in Psalm 14, Psalm 53, and Ecclesiastes 7:20, we have to look back at what Paul is doing here. He's quoting from the Old Testament. So in verse, he continues in verse 13, by saying their throat is an open tomb. And he says, with their tongue they have practiced deceit. I'm in Romans 3:13. This is taken from Psalm 5:8-9. Lead me, O Lord, in your righteousness because of my enemies. Make your way straight before me, and there is no truth in their mouth. Their innermost selfish destruction. Their throat is an open grave. They flatter with their tongue. Notice who the psalmist is talking about. The enemies of God. No truth is in their mouth. Their innermost self is destructive. The enemies of God. Paul's point here is we can all be enemies of God. All have sinned. But it's a deliberate deliberate choice. Paul's point again, I'm going to stress this week. Paul is not teaching total inability. He's talking about the unrighteous. Psalm 140, verses 1 through 3. Deliver me, O Lord, from evil men. Preserve me from violent men, who plan evil things in their hearts, stir up wars continually. They make their tongues sharp as serpents, and under their lips is the venom of apes. Deliver me, O Lord, from evil men. Notice, evil men. They make their tongues sharp as a serpent's, and under their lips is venom of apes. This is what he's talking about, the evil, the wicked. This is what Paul is quoting from. You look at verse 14, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. So, Psalm 10, 3 through 7. For the wicked boasts of the desires of his soul, and the one greedy for gain curses and renounces the Lord. In the pride of his face, the wicked does not seek him at all. All his thoughts are, there is no God. His ways prosper at all times. Your judgments are on high, out of his sight. As for all his foes, he puffs at them. He says in his heart, I shall not be moved throughout all generations. I shall not meet adversity. His mouth is filled with cursing and deceit and oppression. Under his tongue are mischief and iniquity. Notice in the text that Paul is quoting from, we're in Romans 3 verse 14. The text that Paul is quoting from, the wicked boasts in the desires of his soul. The wicked does not seek him. His mouth is filled with cursing and deceit and oppression. Under his tongue are mischief and iniquity. Again, he's talking about those who have sinned, those who are wicked. He says in verse 15, their feet are swift to shed blood. Verse 16, destruction and misery are in their ways, and the way of peace they have not known. This is a quotation from Proverbs 1:16. My son, if sinners entice you, we're going to start in verse 14. My son, if sinners entice you, notice who he's talking about in this quote. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without reason, like shield. Let us swallow them alive and whole, like those who go down to the pit. We shall find all precious goods. We shall fill our houses with plunder. Throw a new lot among us, and we will all have one purse. My son, do not go in the way with them. Hold back your feet from the past, for their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed innocent blood. Proverbs 1:11 through 16. Solomon is warning his son to not stand in the way of sinners. If sinners entice you, someone who is living in sin, if they say, let us ambush the innocent without reason, These are wicked people, and this in verse 16 is where the quote takes place. Again, in Isaiah 59 7 through 8, we have the way of peace they have not known. Their feet run to evil, they are swift to shed innocent blood. Their thoughts are the thoughts of iniquity, desolation and destruction are in their highways. The path of peace they do not know. Who? Those that run to evil. The way of peace they do not know, and there is no uh, there is no justice in their paths. They have made their roads crooked. No one who treads on them knows peace. Again, their feet run to evil. These are the people he's talking about. The people who run to evil, whose thoughts are the thoughts of the iniquity, the way of peace they don't know. There is no justice in their paths. No one who treads on them knows peace. The way of peace is not known. And then verse 18, he finishes this quote. And remember his point for bringing this quote up. His point is not even our ability. He says all are under sin. And he uses this to back it up. And so in verse 18, he says, there is no fear of God before their eyes. Psalm 36, verse 1, transgression speaks to the wicked deep in his heart. There is no fear of God before his eyes. This is the wicked. There is no fear of God. All are under sin. All can be wicked. Whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, you had no advantage being a Jewish Christian over a Gentile Christian because you are all under sin. That's Paul's point. Whoops. So, is there any questions or comments on that? Through verse 18. Anything I need to make clear here? Okay. So Paul says here in verses 19 and 20, he says, now we know whatever the law says, it says to those who are under the law, that every mouth may be stopped, and all that would may become guilty before God. What the law of Moses says, it speaks to those who are under the law of Moses. Under the law of Moses. He's continuing his point that he made in chapter 2. That they're not justified under the law of Moses. They're sinning because they're not keeping the law of Moses. This is why the law of Moses is insufficient. He says, but we know, well, that whatever the law says, It says that those who are under the law, that every mouth may be stopped and all the world might become guilty before God. The law was designed to make people guilty. It didn't justify anybody. There was a reminder of sins. This is why the law was insufficient. This is why the Jewish Christians need to let go of the law. Stop bringing it back. And then he says, by the works of the law, no one will be justified. By the works of the law of Moses, no one will be justified. That's why he says in the end of chapter 2, circumcision or uncircumcision avails nothing, but it's that of the heart. The works of the law of Moses do not justify you. And this directly connects back to what he said when we started this section. Verse 9, what then? Are we better than they? Not at all, for we have previously charged both Jew and Greeks are all under sin. It doesn't matter. You can't keep the law of Moses and be justified. The works of the law are insufficient. You can't boast in that law anymore. You've left that law. Don't go back to it. And so they are all under sin. It does not matter whether you are a Jew under the law or a Gentile without the law, all are under sin. This is a major point that Paul brings out in Romans chapter in this section and in Romans chapter 3. So that's all I have for this week. Is there any questions or comments through verses 9 through 20? Verses 9 through 20. Anything I didn't make clear or I need to go back to? Anything at all? Does that make sense? Well, we got about 15 minutes to chat, so if you have any questions over the Bible study we engaged in, please feel free to comment down below. Next week, we will be in Romans 3 verses 21 through, Romans chapter 3, hopefully finishing up chapter 3. And what Paul's going to do is God's righteousness is revealed through faith, not from the law of Moses. Apart from the law, and he says that you can't boast in it like you were doing for the law of Moses. You cannot boast in your law keeping. That's what he's going to do at the end of chapter 3. And uh, we're going to study that next week, Lord willing. I will wake the dawn with praises. Dawn and sunset, fierce and joyful, each reflect his mighty ways. With the sea and sky before me, I will give him all my praise. I will wake the dawn with praises. I will speak his name abroad. I will worship him forever. He, my Lord, my only God. Stars with joy and praises from me. Lesser light will know my voice. When I give my God his glory, night will hear me and rejoice. I will wake the dawn with praises. I will speak his name abroad. I will worship him forever. Hear my Lord, my only God. Shout his glory, brothers, sisters. Lord his name and do his will, like the sands upon the shoreline, are the praises due him still. I will wake the dawn with praises. I will speak his name abroad. I will worship him forever. Hear my Lord, my only God. Good night, Sister D. If there's any song requests, you can take those. We'll sing for a little bit. Oh, sometimes the shadows are deep, and rough seems the path to the goal, and sorrows sometimes how they sweep, like tempest down over the soul. Oh, then to the rock let me fly, to the rock that is higher than I. Oh, then to the rock let me fly, to the rock that is higher than I. Oh, sometimes how long seems the day, and sometimes how weary my feet. But whirling in life's dusty way, the rock's blessed shadow, how sweet. Oh, then to the rock let me fly, to the rock that is higher than I. Oh, then to the rock let me fly, to the rock that is higher than I. Oh, near to the rock let me keep, ere blessings or sorrows prevail, or climbing the mountain misty steep, or walk in the shadowy vale. Oh, then to the rock let me fly, to the rock that is higher than I. Oh, then to the rock let me fly, to the rock that is higher than I. Let's see. I'm gonna view that holy city. Will be our next song. I'm gonna view that holy city. Oh, I'm gonna view that holy city one of these days. I'm gonna view that holy city. I'm gonna view that holy city one of these days. One of these days. I'm gonna view. Excuse me. I'm gonna meet my loving Jesus. Oh, I'm gonna meet my loving Jesus one of these days. I'm gonna meet my loving Jesus. I'm gonna view that holy city. Meet my loving Jesus one of these days. One of these days. Oh, sorry, I did that last. I'm gonna sit at the banquet table. I'm gonna sit at the banquet table one of these days. I'm gonna sit at the banquet table. I'm gonna sit at the banquet table one of these days. One of these days. I'm gonna feast on milk and honey. Oh, I'm gonna feast on milk and honey one of these days. I'm gonna feast on milk and honey. I'm gonna feast on milk and honey one of these days. One of these days. I'm gonna sing and never get tired. Oh, I'm gonna sing and never get tired one of these days. I'm gonna sing and never get tired. I'm gonna sing and never get tired one of these days. One of these days. Let's see. Jesus, name above all names. Jesus, name above all names. Jesus, name above all names. Beautiful Savior, glorious Lord, Emmanuel, God is with us, blessed Redeemer, living Word, Jesus, Lord God Almighty, wonderful Counselor, Light of the world, the Prince of Peace, hope of all glory, man of sorrows, Lamb of God. This is my Father's world. This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears, all nature sings, and round me rings the music of the Spirit. This is my Father's world. I rest me in the thought of rocks and trees, of skies and seas. His hand a wondrous wrought. This is my Father's world. The birds their carols raise, the morning light, the lily white, declare their Maker's praise. This is my Father's world. He shines in all that's fair. In the rustling grass I hear him pass. He speaks to me everywhere. This is my Father's world. Oh, let me never forget that though the wrong seems all so strong, God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world. The battle is not done. Jesus who died shall be satisfied, and earth and heaven be one. One more. We'll close with this one. Jesus, let us come to know you. This will be our last song, and then we'll say our goodbyes. Thank you all for being here and studying with me. Jesus, let us come to know you. Let us see you face to face. Touch us, hold us, use us, mold us. Only let us live in you. Jesus, draw us ever nearer. Hold us in your loving arms. Wrap us your gentle presence with me and come bring us home. Thank you all for being here. And remember, here at CEM, we want to do three things. We want to glorify God. We want to edify the saints. And we want to answer any spiritual questions you might have. We hope we met our goals tonight. Thank you all. And God bless.